people's art at my house, and I am fulfilled by doing that. So kind of fun that 6 years later, now I'm showing you that I actually make my own art too. And that felt like a good way to start the presentation, talking about my work with Fawn, because she inadvertently is the person who kind of led me into metal. So when I was an undergrad, my first ever mica class that Cindy Cheng was the teacher of, actually, Fawn was the GTI. And then my senior year in our thesis professional development class, we came in one day and they were like, all right, so we assume you've all done an internship at this point. And I was like, no one told me I was supposed to do that. So I went on like the MICA job portal and saw that Fawn needed a studio assistant. And I was like, Fawn was cool. I'll be her studio assistant. Um, so I started off as her studio assistant as an internship. And then after I graduated, she got a grant from the BMA to put on this show. It was with the Commons collaboration. So there was a whole install also that I made some things for, but I could give a whole presentation about Fawn's work, but I'm supposed to be talking about my work. So this is the stuff that I made. So I made these garments for a performance that we did. And I also made over here tote bags that you can see that we sold. Um, and then this is the closing reception for that show. I made these inflatables out of recycled trash bags. And then this is the outfit I made for her for the closing. It's all free machine embroidery. So I had her draw her signature like painted pattern on a piece of water soluble fabric, and then I pinned it to this fabric, and then I did the embroidery over it. So then when you wash away the water soluble fabric, it's just that. And then these are some other projects that I've worked on with her. Here's at the Smithsonian Gardens. I helped with the fabrication of all these plants and these planters. This was a project we did for this weird Amex Platinum card event, where we made a mini golf course and I got to go to a private Kalani show. Never thought that that would happen. So that was cool. And then, so how I said Fawn led me to metal. In 2018, I was selling closets and it was sucking out my soul. So one day I quit out of nowhere and I texted Fawn and I said, do you know anyone who's hiring? I'll do anything. And her boyfriend at the time, now husband, Malcolm, who owns a metal fabrication shop, was looking for an admin assistant. And I was like, cool, I can click around on a computer. So I did admin work for like maybe a month or two, and then we ran out of admin work. So Malcolm was like, do you want to learn how to work in the shop? And I was like, totally, hell yeah. So these are just some random photos from over the past 7 years, because I still work for him to this day. Um, I'm not really that great at taking pictures, but here, these pictures are all some smarter, not harder moments. Some welds and some finishing that I was proud of. Um, some other things, we used to do a lot of structural projects, staircases, railings, decks, things like that. So here I am above 3 stories worth of open space, angle grinding some treads, which I thought was really cool, but most people don't think that that's really very safe. And then this is us lifting one of the stringers into place. Oh, and this is actually in City House on Charles Street, where Grand Central used to be. This is a stringer that I made more or less fully by myself. And then it being installed. I think this was actually the first thing I made fully by myself, working for him, that I was very proud of. It was the base for this like grill or table or something from one of his friends' backyards. So then I started doing some freelance work on my own. So I did a few projects for a florist. These two are wedding arbors, so they get covered in flowers. You can't actually see them. Actually, this you can't see it either because a piece of foam goes in it and then you shove flowers in it. And I made like 20 of them, I think. Um, these are two signs. Unfortunately, I didn't take a picture of the finished product of this one. But a friend of mine had a restaurant, so this was like their logo, and it fit right here on the gate. And then I made that one as well. It was called Sincero. Oh. And then this is something that I did for the Harriet Tubman Cultural Center in Southern Maryland. I met this woman who just had a space above Malcolm's shop, and she asked Malcolm if he knew anyone who knew how to sew, and he was like, "Yeah, Rachel knows how to sew." So I made this outfit, and then I did some like restoration of like historical garments that were on some of the other mannequins, but this was the one mannequin that I got to like fully make the garment myself. I want Okay. This is a project I worked on in collaboration with my friend Bisan Hamis. We made these tables for the BMA for an artist, Pablo Helguera. They're still there. I think they're going to be up for a few more years to come, and you can go and play games on them. These are some stands I fabricated for Liz Enns with my friend Ada Lodge. These are, well, the benches I fabricated for my friend Abigail Lucian. This is from their solo show at Delhi Gallery in New York. So I fully made these benches and designed them myself.
Oh, I wish I
This
could
is
see
from
this.
Abigail's solo show at the BMA. I did a little bit of fabrication on this. I fabricated this seat, and I did the plasma cutting parts in there. Abigail makes really beautiful work, as do all the people that I've worked for. So now outside of metal, how I said that I told the professional development class that I like to craft at home, I went through a big beading phase during COVID. So these are some of the beaded things that I made. I made a lot of bootstraps, way more than I have photos of. I also made multiple more tops like these two for friends for their birthdays, and I would always forget to take pictures before I gave them to them. So I think I made like 4 or 5 of those in total. And then some harnesses. And then I made a lot of collars for my friend's pets. I made this couch for my friend's hamster. I tried to put the video of the hamster playing on it in the slideshow, but for some reason it wouldn't upload. So if you want to see it, ask me after. It's on my phone. These were the first projects I made after I started working at Mica. So I am the full-time technician in the metal shop in the interdisciplinary sculpture department. Um, so this was actually when I first learned powder coating, and I wanted to make something that would fit in the toaster oven that had some sort of a function. So I was like, we need that in our house, so I'll make that. And then this was for my friend Demi for her birthday. We had not a lot of space in our apartment in the bathroom or for getting ready. So I made her this vanity that perfectly fit in the corner using my custom closet design skills. These are some weavings I made because when I first started working for Malcolm, he had this plastic bin full of like 50 ratchet straps that he had used for a project. And he was like, "Do you want these?" And I said, "Okay." And I had actually made this um, at I actually think this was the very first thing I made when I started working at Mica. And it wasn't supposed to be anything at first. I was just kind of fucking around. Um, and then I had the straps and I was like, let me turn into a weaving. So I made this really janky 2x4 loom. And then this was the first iteration. And I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. So I was like, I'm going to take that apart and do something different. So then I made this one and I did really like this one. So this hangs in my house now. And then I made this one because I was trying to play around with the idea of being able to see both sides of it. But it didn't really stick out far enough from the wall to like really be able to see the backside. And I didn't take a picture, but the backside has like loops that stick out in the same way. And then I started making furniture. So for a long time and kind of still to this day, I really only like to make things that I need or that are gifts for other people. So all of the furniture that I've made is for a very specific function in my house for very specific spaces. Um, so this was for the bathroom in my old house next to this giant clawfoot bathtub, for us to store like all of our bath stuff on it. Um, and also all of the furniture that I make and all of the metal work that I do is made fully from scraps that I find at Mica. I don't buy any metal. Um, so I think that's kind of cool. This was a table I made. I guess this one didn't have a function, but Malcolm had a bunch of tempered glass from some project that for some reason the clients maybe didn't want it. I'm not sure. But so I got this piece of glass for free and I was like, I'll turn that into a table. Um, so that These three tables were all for different purposes in my bedroom. Um, I made the one in the middle first because I was just playing around like weaving strips of metal together. These cutout shapes were like scraps that were offcuts from something someone had cut out on the plasma CNC. Um, and then next I made the second one, this cantilever table. Um, and I had put together this top first with just some sides of plywood because I was like, oh, these stripes are fun. And I had this piece. And then actually, Liam, who's here right now, showed me this guy on Instagram who does patterned plywood and like has all these videos about how to do it yourself. So it's open source. I wasn't just copying. And so I did that detail along the edges. And then this I made most recently. So I decided to get a little more creative with arranging the plywood. Oh, then why won't it let me go back? Okay. Um, 2 summers ago, I took a class at Arrowmont. My first time going to a craft school. I took a class in steam bending wood and basketry. Um, so this is the process of steam bending. I'm usually not super drawn to working with wood personally, because it's not as forgiving as metal, because metal can be additive and subtractive, whereas with wood, if I cut it too small, it's just too small. Um, but the process, you put this like plastic tube over the wood and you steam it, and then you really quickly pull the tube off and then wrap it around your mold form and then clamp it. So these were the two steam bent pieces, and then I turned those into a basket. So at first, when the reeds are wet, I like uh, corseted them in the middle so that when they dried, they held that shape on their own. And then the green is cattail, and the brown is just reed. I don't have a real documentation photo of it, and sadly, the older it gets, the less green it is. Then I took my first class at the Jewelry Center with Andy. And I really was into creating textures on materials, as you can see. And I really liked riveting. I thought that was a lot of fun. Something that I like to do in my work is if I can make something easier using digital fabrication tools, I try to do that because I don't really make things that are digitally fabricated. So all of the letters I cut out from the vinyl cutter, and I've done that process for almost every piece that I've saw pierced since, where I draw it in Rhino and then cut it on the vinyl cutter, and then it makes it, oh my God, sorry, way easier to cut them out. So then these are the final pieces from Andy's class. And then last summer, I took a class with James Thurman in metal spinning, which is really, really fun and apparently not super widely taught. So it was a really unique experience. And knowing that I probably wasn't going to have the ability to do it again anytime soon, I made as many things as I possibly could. And still to this day, none of them are finished, but one day I will get to them. So the process, you can kind of see here that your piece starts out flat, and then you use a giant burnisher and a lot of paste wax, and you're basically forming the metal over the mold, the wooden mold that you make. Um, and then this was one of the first exercises we did. We like cut our pieces in half to see how even the wall thickness was. That one wasn't that great. Then all the ones that I liked, I didn't want to cut them in half to see. But unfortunately, something that happens quite often is that you push too hard and it gets too thin and it breaks. I have many, many photos of my phone on my phone of pieces like that. But next, if the video works, I have a time lapse. If it'll work. Oh, okay. Well, if you want to see that, you can also talk to me after and I can show you on my phone. It's just a video of the process of me spinning a bowl. And then I also took a workshop with Suyu Chen in brooch making. It was called Mixed Media Brooch. So everyone brought all their favorite trash and we made whatever we wanted out of it. So these are some of the pieces that I made. This is all of them. This holds matches. This I had a lot of fun making kind of a mechanism where it could move. They told us on the last day when we were doing our like show and tell for like the whole school that like you should put your business cards next to your work. And I was like, I don't have a business card, but I can make one. So that is a brooch and a business card. Thank you. Then I took a class with Jay Diamond here at the Jewelry Center in cast chains. I'd never done metal casting before. So this is another example of me using digital fabrication tools to make my job easier. So I designed what I wanted each link to look like, and then I made a 3D model of the negative of a rubber mold so that then I could pour the rubber and get a flexible mold to pour the wax into to get each link. And then there's my sprue tree, all my links, and then there's the final product. And that was a gift from my friend Emily. And then this is the second project I made in that class. So we were given the option, but we didn't have to try to sprue a chain that was already connected. Really, really difficult, but it ended up turning out in the end. And I really liked the challenge of that. So when they reopened the foundry at Mica, I decided I was going to make that same thing, but big. So again, I made a rubber mold, cast all the links. I don't know why that photo isn't there, but that was of the wax sprue tree. Then there it is in metal. Oh, these two are backwards. That would have been before that. And then there's the final product. And this piece is kind of the bane of my existence because it's still sitting in a bag unfinished because it takes forever. It took so long to cut all the pieces off the tree without cutting any of the other pieces off because I didn't think of that when I was putting it together in wax. So after I had cut it all off, I was like, I'm done with this. But one day I'll go back to it. And then this is a pair of earrings I made for my friend Demi. So they're called maxillofacial implants. And I just thought, wow, that's a really fun shape on its own. And someone pointed out to me that I didn't even think of this, that like the thing itself is also made out of metal. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. But this is mirrored acrylic. I was hoping you'd be able to kind of like see your reflection in it, but since it's so tiny, not really. It's just really shiny. But that kind of started a series of a few more pieces that I actually have in the hallway that I made at the beginning of the residency because I looked up some like shapes of more of them and they come in all kinds of crazy shapes. And they're really fun. And then this piece I made for the community challenge here at the BJC. And this is the piece that was kind of the starting point for the other body of work that I have been starting working on during this residency. So while I was working on this one, Mercury actually had come over to me and been like, we're talking about the piece, and then they were like, what are you thinking about? And it's funny because I had never really thought about my own like making of art as like being allowed to just be about multiple different random things you're thinking about. I always kind of thought I needed it to either mean nothing or have a very solid concept. Um, so that kind of was like an eye opener for me. And this is based on a trip I took to the Grand Canyon. So the lines are kind of like inspired by the striations in the rocks, and then the stones represent the people. And I called it a portrait of two people at the Grand Canyon. Um, so that's that. And then one other part of my art practice that's unrelated to any of these things, but I do think is important for me as an artist and also sort of will relate into one of the things that I am thinking about with the work. Oh, well, those are my grandma's that I'm making now. Is I am part of a theater troupe called the Baltimore Freedom Theater. My friend Ahlam started the group. Because one of her cousins in Palestine had a theater called the Jenin Freedom Theater. And unfortunately, it no longer exists, and I believe that he was executed for making political theater. And that is what our Freedom Theater is paying homage to. So we do uh, productions that are political, and just a really beautiful thing to be a part of because I care a lot about the specific cause, but also because bringing to my next slide. One thing I think about a lot, these are both my grandmas. Sorry, Nana, that I only had this photo of you on my phone. But it's art, so it's fitting. But so this is my Oma. She is the first person who taught me anything about craft. She was always making things. She taught me sewing, knitting, embroidery. But she is from, or was from a Slavic minority group called the Sorbs, who during World War II were forced to Germanize. So their culture was taken from them. It's really difficult for me to find anything on the internet in English. Maybe there's more in German about them as a people. Um, Very few people even speak the language anymore. So to me, being part of the Freedom Theater and trying to continue on the legacy of a culture that is being stripped from its people feels very personal. Um, and I think about her a lot. And then this is my Nana. Um, and then I wanted to collect a lot more pictures for this slide, but time really got away from me. So I come from a family of like hands-on blue collar workers for many generations. I'm probably the first person who would be considered a quote artist. But my Nana used to make bathing suits in a factory in Brooklyn. My Papa was a plumber and he welded parts of the Verrazano Bridge in New York. My Oma, she at home was always making things for the house. And then my Opa I never met. He passed before I was born, but I feel like I should give him a shout out too, since I'm talking about everybody else. Um, so I feel like for me, the act of making is like a continuation of like generations of that being just a part of life. I've always kind of said, and I still feel this way, that I don't really care too much if my work is in galleries. I make it because I need to make things to feel whole. And I think that that also is kind of because I was largely raised by both my grandmothers when my parents were at work. Seeing them like always doing things, always being occupied. I went to work with both of them. They taught me the importance of community. I used to go with my Nana to the senior center, and I was the only little kid hanging out with all the old people. So I think I got a lot of my work ethic from them, as well as my parents. So that's one thing that I think about a lot in relation to my work because the some of the pieces that I'm making now are based on memories, the same way that Chain was based on the trip to the Grand Canyon. And um, I think a lot about the idea of I think it's reconsolidation, and that's like the fact that every time you remember something, you're not actually remembering the initial event, you're remembering the last time you remembered it. So actually, the more often you think about any specific thing, the less accurate it's likely to be. And when I first learned that, that kind of scared me. Um, and it also made me think about like how like as a kid, I would always look through like photo albums, like with my grandmas, and how I wish that I had like paid more attention to the stories to go along with them. So I think me making pieces about specific memories to kind of immortalize them, um, is like my way of like creating a snapshot of them in time because my brain is going to keep changing them every time I think about them. And then another thing I think about a lot is this poem that my friend Nadia sent me once. It's hanging above my desk and it also hangs next to my bed. It's called Jessica Gives Me a Chill Pill. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's just like these moments where she talks about these specific events with her and Jessica that just feel so succinct and so short, but like you can just feel it and like it feels really special. So the first piece, also I didn't finish any of the pieces that I started, but that's okay. So the first piece is a brooch that's based on a window and me and someone who would play a game looking out the window together. Um, so this was another time of using 3D modeling to make it easier for myself to figure out exactly how to do each layer before I put them together so that it would work. And then I got to learn how to use the pulse arc welder from Elliot during my residency, which was really awesome. It's a lot of fun. It's a little different than any of the welding that I'm used to. And it's really tiny, so it's really cute. And then the next piece, this is the piece I spent the most time on. I really thought that I would like fully finish all of these pieces and then have more time, but then things go wrong along the way and I'm still learning. It's kind of funny that I always at work tell students like when they make mistakes and get frustrated, like you're still learning, it's okay. And I had to tell myself that like this isn't the usual thing that you do. So this is based on skydiving. This looks probably like chaos to everybody else, but it makes so much sense to me and how I design things. So unfortunately, I was hoping that all my pieces would, like be based more on like the actual specific events, like the way that the last one is the actual window. But of course, I don't have any photos from when I jumped out of a plane. So I just had to get some on the internet. Um, so for this piece, I got to learn the powder coating setup here from Andy. Um, and I wanted it to kind of be something that was abstract enough that like the shapes are and the colors are just fun, but once you figure out what it is, you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then the two stones represent the two people, and they will be dangling in space, so it looks like they're flying through the sky. The last piece that I wanted to make was a chain that folds up into a chessboard. So this was me trying to figure out how big the connecting links and each link needed to be able to fold into a chessboard. And then in the end, I was like, I'm just going to put them all on a piece of paracord and make them be movable because that'll be easier. And then in making that decision, I realized that I could make it double-sided and that the pieces then could be rotated so that you could alternate the colors between each link. So one side will be this and the other side will be that, but when you wear it, it can be whichever or both. And then I will eventually cast tiny pieces to be able to play. And that's my whole slideshow. Thank you to everyone who has helped me. Thank you guys all for coming and everyone who is on Zoom listening. Yeah. Not on the internet. It was actually very cheap. I can pick this up. Yeah, please do. Oh, it's Yes.
Rachel, I love you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess before anyone asks questions, if they have them, I'll show you. So this, I felt it was better to not rush to finish it because I knew that I would have just messed it up. So there's like this little standoff here, and then this is the second little standoff that has a hole through it so that there'll be a jump ring that then these connect to, so they can swing this way as well as this way in space.
Are they like the parachuters?
Yeah. They're skydiving.
Okay, cool. So we have time for questions, answers, comments. Anybody? Also, folks on Zoom, if you want to add anything in the chat. Yeah.
What's been the most insightful thing that you've learned through this past residency?
That sometimes when your initial plan isn't working, you just gotta stop trying. I think that was a really important lesson for me to learn because I spent a lot of time redoing a lot of things.
Within those pivots and like working on these pieces, thinking of those memories, how has working on these pieces transformed those memories?
That's a really good question. I think for me, a lot of the memories, like I have a whole list of like all the different memories I want to make pieces on, and some of them are like heavy in some way, whether it's the thing itself or like the feelings surrounding it or the people that they're with. So it kind of feels like hopefully when they're done, it'll be a type of catharsis to like physically turn the thought into a thing that then is just the positive. And it's no longer surrounded by the other negatives because it doesn't have to be.
Wow. I have a question, like, so why like a chessboard? Like, I didn't know you're like, are you a chess player? Is there like a memory associated with that?
Yes. I used to play chess with someone, and I was a very sore loser. And I don't think I ever hundreds of games.
How do you feel that primarily making furniture initially affects like your understanding of scale in jewelry and like the interaction of the body?
That's
Like,
also
what
a really good
influences?
question.
Yeah, what influences does that experience have?
I think I always, when I'm making anything, my brain works like very geometrically. And that's like how like reading shop drawing and from the kind of furniture that I make, making furniture works. And I feel like that has been how I have made these things as well. And I think using Rhino to like do my drawings is also really helpful. Because sometimes like I'll be, like for the window, like, drawing out all the shapes and thinking, oh, I'll have the whole thing be this big. And then I go in and I double check, what the thickness of this cross piece is. And it's like 164th of an inch. And I'm like, that's not gonna work. So I think it's something I'm still kind of getting used to. But I think working tiny as a whole is something I'm getting used to. It's different physically as well as mentally.
Do you think it like affects you? When you say it affects like the form as well, like the geometry of the form as well?
Yeah.
With the piece that's about skydiving, I know you said that obviously you don't have like an exact picture of what your perspective was, So I'm wondering now that you look back on some memories and maybe you don't have an exact representation of it to make, like, has that changed your experience of these memories or like when you look back at them? Because now it's like not that personal because you're like looking at someone.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's kind of a good thing. Like maybe it makes it a bit more universal for myself. That I'm not, the only one who has done something or felt something. Maybe.
Yeah, sorry, I have another question about that. Like, how do you, like, is there an intended, like, idea or message that you would like people to get when they look at these memory-based pieces? Like, what would you like for your audience to interpret or walk away with?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not really thinking about the audience. I'm making things like that's yeah. So they were like, yeah, they're just for me to shake something out of myself. Yeah.
So like another, like, how did you find, what was that base implant called? Like, like, how did you like come across that?
Oh, from Demi's X-ray on her fridge.
Okay. That's Demi's face.
Yeah.
The one in your presentation was the.
I walked into her kitchen and it was about to be her birthday, and I was like, I gotta make her something. And then I saw that, and I was like, I'm gonna make that.
Yeah, you can match. Oh wow.
And then I just looked up to see what it was called, and then I found what it was called, and then that led me to the other pictures, and I was like, whoa.
I guess I have a question about you've scaled down to work in jewelry. You've scaled up professionally for your work to make larger than life, like scaled things, and you've started working more so in like a human scaled sort of like furniture thing. Do you have plans to go larger? How do you see the jewelry work influencing furniture work, like scaling up and down? Or I don't know, I guess what are your thoughts from
Yeah.
this point going forward?
That's a good question. So I mean, until I started taking classes here and working tiny, I was never really making anything like representational in any way. All the furniture is just like shapes and like colors that I like have what's the opposite of aversion? Thank you. So I think when I was making these, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, what if I made something like that big? But I guess the part of the reason I started making furniture was because I didn't want to just make things that just like sit there and take up space. Not that I'm like uh shitting on things that are just art objects. But for me, I'm like, I don't like to have a lot of things. So that was why I started making the furniture. But then in making these, I was like, oh, okay, I could do things like this on a bigger scale. And then I could like do more isn't the right word, but different, like have more detail and certain things that I couldn't or don't yet know how to do tiny. So I guess, yeah, I think it has affected my thought of making big things.
Yeah.
I don't really have any desire to make huge things after you've installed a few staircases. You're kind of like,
I also
so.
I studied jewelry in undergrad and was in critiques with non-jewelry people, and that was always the most trite feedback that I got was, what if it was huge? Like, what if it's just jewelry?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Let's see, I hope I'm not missing any questions. Not a lot of questions, a lot of praise, and which I'll be sure to pass along. Yeah, just a lot of sweet things to hear. Yeah. I had to read through one. So yeah, any other questions here in person?
The skydiving piece, it seems very sculptural to me. I could really see that some kind of modification of that being an outdoor sculpture kind of thing. The colors are, I don't know,
A playset.
yeah.
I will say I did have the thought of like, what if I made it big, but I'm not necessarily super hyped
Yeah.
about the idea. But I was thinking about it. So maybe one day, but right now I am liking making things tiny because they don't take up a lot of space.
But you get a few.
I have that question, Rachel. As someone who's like worked in furniture in the large and you're switching to jewelry in the small, and then sort of like understanding the ergonomics of the body, and then having to translate that into like the jewelry scale of like how do you apply scale and size and like comfortability in this work being small?
I will say that with the exception of these, I think all of the things that I have made are bigger than what I would wear. And I guess I don't necessarily see them as something that like someone just like puts on to like go to the bar. So I guess I'm not necessarily thinking about like how small to make it super functional.
I have a clarifying.
Yeah.
What is the necessity of wearability in your pieces? Sorry,
That's a good question. Yeah. Someone else asked me that too. I think I like the idea of like it kind of being like something you can carry with you because it is about like these moments that like I want to be with myself. So I guess they kind of become like talismans, in a way, for like that.
Okay, I'm sorry, full of questions. So you talked about like your work ending up with like as gifts for people or like in places where they were intended to be made. Like, where do you want this work to end up?
These I would love if people wore them. Sure, I really trades. So if anyone does like them, I really love to do trades. For these, I think like for these ones, I want to keep them for myself. So I think I just see them living with me.
Yeah.
That was the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they just end up with me.
Would you wear them?
I think like for a special occasion, like to like ornament or that's the only event in my current life. Yeah. But like for things like that, I think yeah.
One interesting comment from Zoom that from Jacqueline, it seems most or all of what you make serves a function for the body, except for maybe the tapestry pieces. Both jewelry and furniture are appropriately scaled for the body's interaction. I think that dovetails nicely with what I was asking you about scale. And I think like one step beyond furniture, I think of like architecture. Jewelry is related to clothing, which you have some experience with.
Yeah.
So I guess do those comments bring up anything for you?
I mean, I do have very strong opinions about when I'm not allowed to touch the art.
Right.
So I think maybe that's why I'm drawn to these mediums because I want people to be able to touch things. And I guess actually something I think about a lot also with that is like, how do you make a piece of art that can be interacted with without having to put a piece of paper or whatever next to it that says like, please feel free to touch. Like sometimes that is necessary for people to know, but like I think I'm like kind of fascinated by like what can we as makers do to let people know like it's okay rather or other than just seeing someone else already touching it and not getting in trouble. So maybe because these things are inherently like needed to be handled, it kind of like skips that whole issue in my head, perhaps.
Yeah. I think it was a great response. Yeah.
Thank you. So please touch all of it.
All right, I think we'll conclude the Zoom, but this conversation is great, so I hope y'all stick around, continue to hang out with Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.